Hi everyone. I think there's this misconception that slower lenses are somehow less pro, as if manufacturers won't put as much effort into an f4 zoom as they would into an f2.8 or an f1.2 lens. On top of that, it kind of seems like you have to have these large and fast lenses in order to appear professional, to look like you really know what you're doing. But have you considered the f4 zooms as a serious option? There are some things you gain by going for an f4 zoom, and in this video I'm going to discuss them with you. See, a lens like this, 16-35 f4 IS, optically a really good lens, nice and lightweight. When would I really want to use this at 2.8? Would it be just for the light gathering? If that's the case, the image stabilization in this lens will take care of that for you, and then you won't need it. In fact, we need to think carefully sometimes about what do we really want faster apertures for, because I think a lot of the time it's just been ingrained in us that you must get that more expensive, faster lens. I would rather take something like this because it's lightweight and easy to use, but I also know that the image stabilization is probably going to compensate even more than that 2.8 aperture is. I can probably get a longer handheld shot at f4 with image stabilization than I can at 2.8 without image stabilization. That makes this the better travel lens. In fact, you could do most of your travel and landscape photography just on this lens, and just add the 70-200 if you really think you need it. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, what about those times where I want to take a portrait and I just want to blow the background out and get it all nice and blurry? Well, I actually think you should get a prime for that, because a 2.8, it doesn't really excel at that. They're quite good at it, but they're not really going to excel if that's what you want to do. So a really good option if you want something that's going to allow you to do portraits. If you want to do it on a budget, just get a 50 1.8 or an 85 1.8. But if you've got a bit more money, you might want to go for a 50 1.2 or an 85 1.2. Something along those lines, or if Nikon, you might want to go for one of the f1.4 lenses. For instance, this is the 50mm 1.4G on my D600. It's a really small, lightweight prime. If I combine that with the f4 zooms, I've got another option that can just slip into my bag, and then I've got a really rounded kit that works really well. So that can counterbalance that need for a faster aperture, give you a really fast aperture option as and when you need it, but something that's small and portable. But not only are the f4 zooms really good for travel and landscape work, they're actually really good for portraiture, because I really like using the 24-105 for studio work, and also the 70-200 f4 as well. I'll stick a couple of pictures on the screen so you can see what I do with that lens now. This is the 70-200 f4 IS from Canon. It's really small and lightweight, but optically, the quality of this lens is as good as the 2.8. You just don't get the 2.8 aperture, but this is essentially the same lens as an f4 version, and that's the way to think about it. What that means is the 70-200 is a lens that I wouldn't always bring with me because of the fact that I might not use it that much, but it's really nice to have sometimes. But when the lens is this small and compact and lightweight, I can slide this into most of my camera bags really easily, which means that I'm actually going to bring it. You know, there's that saying, the best camera is the one that you have with you. Well, that kind of goes for lenses as well. If you actually bother bringing the thing because it's so portable, you're more likely to have it with you, which means that you're more likely to actually use it. This lens is as sharp and as good quality as the 2.8. It just lacks the 2.8 aperture. That is really the only difference. Now here it is on my 5D Mark II. Now look at the difference this makes. When I use the camera like this, I can just flick between the zoom range like this without having to sort of turn and turn and turn. I can do it smoothly and quickly in one motion because the way the lens is designed, it's very light and easy to zoom. And this makes it just a joy to use. To have a 70-200 that's this size means that you're probably going to bring it. And it balances so easily on these kind of full frame camera bodies. Nikon have an option that's just the same as this as well. I would go for the IS version over the non-stabilized version. The thing is, when you're at those longer focal lengths, you want to be able to have a steady shot. Because it's an f4, you have to think that as soon as the light starts fading, your ISO is going up, your shutter speed is coming down, and that can start to present problems. Having that image stabilization, even though it costs just that little bit more, It's really worth it on the 70-200. And in fact, on the f4 zooms in general, it's worth having the image stabilization, because if we're not shooting moving subjects, we can shoot at those slower shutter speeds and keep our ISO down and compensate for not having the f2.8 aperture, which I'm going to get onto just in a moment. Because you see, the thing is, with having an f2.8 aperture, your lens is going to be bigger. It's going to be like twice the price probably. But even if you just wanted to walk around with one lens, having an f4 aperture is no problem at all, because when you're shooting things that are like landscape and travel, you're probably going to be wanting to be at f4 to f8 or even f11 anyway. So using f2.8 doesn't really help you. Here's the way to think about it. Think to yourself, realistically, how many times are you going to shoot a lens at f2.8? And so you see that being in that f4 aperture is like a really nice option. You just start to blur the background maybe just a little bit, and just an overall look which is really good. So a full kit of the f4 zooms would be maybe a 16-35, the 24-105 and the 70-200. But here's the thing. You can mix and match and only take certain lenses depending on what you're doing. For instance, if you want to do a bit of architecture and you're on holiday, you might only take the 16-35. But if you're going to do some street scenes and so on, and you want to do some portraits and maybe pictures of your family, 24-105 would be perfect for that. It's just about wide enough to get in enough of the background, but you can do those shots that look a little bit more professional at some of those longer focal lengths as well. And if you want to go off and do some landscape photography, you might go for the 16-35 plus the 70-200. And those two lenses will keep the weight down by missing out that middle lens, but also giving you a tremendous amount of flexibility by going from 16-35 and then from 70-200. And that little gap in the middle, you can usually either move to compensate for it, or you might want to crop a little bit. But mostly when people are doing landscape photography, that eye will drift towards the wider end of the focal range or the longer end. So even if you took the 24-105, a lot of people end up sort of going from 24-105 and backwards and forwards. But even that is another option. So overall, I think you should take these f4 zooms really seriously, because one, the image quality on them is outstanding. Two, they're really affordable. They're much cheaper than their 2.8 counterparts. Three is that they're really lightweight and easy to pack, and you're actually going to bother taking them with you. And four, because of all of that, you're probably going to build out a full kit of these zoom lenses that you can really use to give you the full focal range that you want, from 16 all the way to 200 millimeters, which is really nice to have. And then I would supplement those f4 zoom lenses with fast prime lenses, because then what you get is sort of the best of both worlds. You get the lightweight zoom options with maximum flexibility, and then you get a couple of prime lenses that are just your portrait lenses for outdoors and so on, if you really want that and if you need it. But you might be surprised how much you can do just with your f4 zooms anyway. Do you guys have any f4 zooms of your own? Let me know in the comments what you guys use. What's your zoom lens kit? Have you gone in on the f4 zooms already and you're thinking about getting another one? Let me know what your kit is for your zoom lenses and how you've been getting on with that. It'd be interesting to see how useful you've been finding your f4 zooms, and then other people can read that in the comments as well, and they can get some information from you guys with your experiences too. I've also started a Patreon page. Check that out in the description down below, and I have workshops available online as well. Check them out in the link in the description. Leave me a like if you've enjoyed that. Subscribe if you're new here and want to see more content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.